Okay, so first things first.
Hello everybody! I have a face now.
And second things second, we're delving back into the underground labs of Aperture Science, solving puzzles and making science to find out just how dangerous it is to go from the Earth to the Moon in under a second. Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of The Science Of, the show where I take a look at the science behind your favourite game shows and more. We're back looking at more of the science behind the Portal franchise. The last time we ventured through the testing chambers of the Aperture Labs, we explored different types of gels found throughout Portal 2, seeing exactly what they are and what their real world equivalents could be.
Ironically, out of all the things we looked at in that video, we never took the time to look at the titular portals behind the Portal franchise. We were way too busy taking a look at if this blue paint was slippy or bouncy to actually take a look at the much more interesting things happening right in front of us.
But look at me assuming that you've looked at my last Portal video. If you want to find out what the different gels in Portal 2 are, then take a look at the link in the corner. And if you're not aware of the plot of the Portal series, let's give you a quick recap. In the Portal games you play as Chell, one of the thousands of science subjects found in Aperture Science's extended relaxation chambers. As you make your way through the Aperture Labs, you'll experience a range of testing chambers that develop your ability to shoot portals and jump through hoops, all for the enjoyment of evil AI.
But rather than take the obvious route of taking a look at the titular portals, today we're going to be taking a look at something completely different. And if you're wondering why, well, let's just say that I've been advised against it.
So anyway, after cracking puzzles and avoiding traps, you're at the end of Portal 2. You've reached the final boss, an idiotic and distinctly British AI called Wheatley, and after he stops every attempt you make to take him down, the only way to defeat him is to fire a portal onto the moon. This results in Wheatley being dragged from the labs with Chell, holding onto his handles as air rushes through the portal to the lunar atmosphere.
But this brings up a couple of questions.
First of all, could Chell survive without a spacesuit and air supply? Second of all, would the change between the Earth and Moon atmospheric pressure be great enough for Chell and Wheatley to be sucked into the vacuum of space? Because don't forget, Chell shot the portal onto the moon's surface. What could this mean for Chell as she gets flung into such a low pressure environment?
To answer the first part, we need to establish a couple of things. First of all, how long is Chell exposed to the lunar atmosphere for?
This is a question that could be asked of any video game set on strange alien worlds. Take Mario Galaxy for instance. No spacesuit, and yet he jumps and yahoos left, right and centre without a care in the world. In reality, spacesuits are crucial for any kind of adventure like this, as they not only provide oxygen to allow astronauts to breathe, but they also protect from radiation, extreme temperatures, and the change in pressure that comes with space travel. Without this suit, all of these spacefaring characters would faint from the lack of air, and then boil alive owing to the reduction in pressure between their body and the vacuum of space. But it takes a little bit of time for all these things to kill you, so it's not like you'd go into space and immediately fall off your mortal coil. When it comes to the lack of oxygen, Chell could be expected to survive for around 15 seconds. This is the amount of time it would take for the body to use up all of the oxygen left in your blood.
Now in the past, we've taken a look at people like Budimir Sabat, who are able to hold their breath for as long as 24 minutes on Earth. But in a lunar atmosphere, you have low atmospheric pressure and low oxygen concentration, so that just ain't gonna cut it.
If Chell had any air remaining in her lungs, the vacuum would have caused the oxygen to expand, rupturing her lungs and forcing air bubbles into the blood, which would eventually lead to the heart and brain, where an embolism would cause an immediate loss of consciousness, most likely killing her faster than if her lungs were straight up empty. Actually, this is something that deep sea divers also need to be really careful of, as the same can happen if a diver holds their breath as they ascend to the surface from the deep sea. But what if Chell falls unconscious from the lack of oxygen? Is that game over? Well, probably not. Someone who fell unconscious from the lack of oxygen would most likely be able to last for a few minutes in space before dying by asphyxiation or the effects of the pressure reduction. But then we need to take into account how long Chell is exposed to the lunar atmosphere for. In the final cutscene of the game, we can measure the time from the first time we see the moon's surface, and then go until Glados is able to drag Chell back to the Aperture Labs. This tells us that Chell is on the lunar surface for around 30 seconds.
Now this is great news for Chell. But why is she able to remain conscious for so much longer than we would expect? Well, on one hand, she is very close to the portal that connects the Earth and the Aperture Labs. That portal has a ton of air rushing through it as the vacuum sucks it in. This means that Chell could feasibly gulp in a couple of lungfuls, which would be enough to stop her from going unconscious. However, it would not be enough to sustain her for long, because it would eventually run out. The room is sealed off, as we saw, because they're pumping in nerve gas. But no matter how much oxygen Chell has, you need to factor into account the change in temperature from the labs, which I guess will be around room temperature, so 25 degrees Celsius, to the moon, which can have temperatures ranging from as high as 120 degrees Celsius during the day, to as low as minus 130 degrees during the lunar night. Now, seeing as Chell is there during the moon's day, she's most likely going to be exposed to the higher end of these temperatures. But seeing as it's only 30 seconds worth, there are unlikely to be any serious negative implications for Chell. So wonderful, let's break out a turret fermented wine and celebrate Chell's health. She's gonna be absolutely fine. Well, only if you ignore the understandable mental anguish that Chell would probably be experiencing with going from Earth to Earth over the course of about 30 seconds. But even with Chell having sufficient access to oxygen, there's another issue that faces her as she jumps between atmospheric pressures of the Earth and Moon, and then back again to the Earth over the course of those 30 seconds. Chell's going from pressures of around 100 kilopascals to pressures as little as 300 femtopascals, over 1 trillion times smaller than the atmospheric pressure of Earth. And as I mentioned earlier, you really don't want to be going back and forth between such different atmospheric pressures, and this is most likely what will take Chell out. But even then, that's not the end of it. Because we have a huge difference in pressure between Moon and the Earth. We also have a huge force, which will be pushing Chell, Wheatley, and all sorts of odds and sods through the portal. But exactly how much force would be pushing Chell out into the other side? Well, we can think of it like an airplane. You know the cliche in movies where a plane gets a hole blown into the side of the fuselage and a ton of people get sucked out into the air? Well, imagine that, but on a much greater difference in pressure. In a plane, the cabin is pressurized so that people can breathe normally. As they climb higher into the atmosphere, they'll experience lower and lower air pressures at the higher altitudes. The difference between the pressure between the inside of the plane and the outside of the plane causes suction. The higher the plane, the bigger the difference in this atmospheric pressure. Aircraft travel at an elevation of between 31 and 38,000 feet, with the outside air pressure being in the region of about 25 kilopascals, about a quarter of the atmospheric pressure at sea level, which is 101 kilopascals. We can calculate the force created as a result of this change in pressure by multiplying the difference in pressure by the area of the space connecting the two areas. Given that pressure is a measure of how much force is acting upon a given area, what we're really calculating is the resultant force as a result of the two pressures coming into contact. In the case of the aircraft, let's say that the missile blows a door-sized hole similar to the size of the portals in Portal, around 1.44 meters squared into the fuselage. The difference in pressure will be 76 kilopascals, so we can say that the resultant force will be 109,000 newtons, expelling bits of fluff, untied luggage and passengers into the sky. But that's with a difference of only 76 kilopascals of pressure. What about the difference between the Earth and the Moon? This is probably as close as we're going to get to a perfect vacuum outside of actually being in space, going from a pressure of 101 kilopascals to effectively zero. And this time we'll do the legwork and bother to calculate the ellipse area of a portal. If these portals are similar in size to a door, they will have a width of around 75 centimeters and a height of 196 centimeters. This gives us a portal area of around 1.11 meters squared. 1.11 meters squared multiplied by 101 kilopascals gives us a resultant force of 112,110 newtons, pulling Chell out of the lab and into space. Now this is a pretty huge amount of force, but you need to remember something. This is the peak force that's acting on Chell at the moment that she passes through the portal. As she's moving away from the portal, the impact of that force will be getting less and less. Now, this is nice, but it's not entirely a huge comfort because we're on the lunar surface, so we're dealing with reduced gravity and reduced air resistance owing to that lower atmospheric pressure. So it wouldn't exactly stop Chell from flying off into outer space and ending up somewhere at around Jupiter. But whilst Chell is holding onto Wheatley's handles for dear life, she's going to be experiencing multiple broken bones from the stress of the vacuum, which means that she definitely wouldn't be able to walk it off. I've said multiple times throughout these videos and this series that it only takes 4,000 newtons to break your femur, the strongest bone in your body.
and with over 100,000 newtons, it's a shock that every joint in her body doesn't get dislocated, let alone bones broken. In fact, it's a wonder that the suction caused by the vacuum doesn't cause the cable attaching Wheatley to Glados' apparatus to snap, sending Chell and the core hurtling into space. But that's a bit more forgivable in Aperture Labs, which would probably have built support strong enough to survive these pressures. So there we go. Turns out that forcing yourself to the moon and back in under a minute isn't the easiest thing in the world, and the strain it would have on the human body is definitely deadly. As far as I'm concerned, Chell would definitely have to be supported by a few of the Aperture turrets to make her way to the elevator, where she exits the Aperture facility, and she'd probably remain unconscious all the way through the beautiful renditions of the turret opera and want you gone.
This definitely won't be the last time I take a look at the science behind Portal. In the future, I'd love to take a look at the science behind a sophisticated AI seen throughout the different core personalities, and compare them to our real world equivalents to see just how far off we are from being able to create some kind of GLaDOS-like being. We're probably quite a way off, but who knows, it could be fun. As well as that, if I can get some sufficient backing from people who know a lot better than I do, it just requires me to talk with someone who knows a lot more than I do about relativity, wormhole calculations, Einstein, all that good stuff. I know a little bit, don't get me wrong, but I do not know enough to go into the immense detail that that episode could require. Either way, it'll be really interesting to take a look at more of the science behind the worlds that Valve has created.
As always, if you enjoyed this video, then don't forget to leave a like, comment and subscribe to the channel. And if you want to help combat the ever-changing and frustrating YouTube algorithm, then make sure you share the video to help my channel grow. If you have any scientific subject or topic that you'd like to see me cover in the future, then please tell me in the comments down below. As well as that, follow me on Twitter to get updates on the latest science of videos, and join my Discord for chats about science, gaming and more. But until then, this has been the Science of Portal. I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. If you're looking for game-based content, then you can join me over on Twitch, where I live stream 3 times a week playing all manner of games suggested by the community. Or if you want to support the channel even further, then you could also contribute to my Patreon, where you'll get access to my private Minecraft server, as well as being able to get behind the scenes access to the creation of all videos.